With a terrorist attack, you have to keep your eye on the backlash. And so, what am I talking about? As we look at this Crocus City attack, what we want to be keeping an eye on is how the government, the Russian government, responds to that attack, especially in terms of the ethnic and religious groups that might be linked to the Islamist State. Now, I'm not saying any of these people had anything to do with that, but the Islamic State is associated with a certain number of ethnic groups. They're about 9% of Russia is Muslim. And the Russian Federation contains a lot of entities, whether they be republics, oblasts, they have a whole bunch of different categories, but it's a cobbled together thing. And there are a lot of areas, especially in the East, that are not Russian, right? They're not ethnically Russian. Only 70% of Russia is ethnically Russian. And so the danger for Russia is that they will start reacting, cracking down on these groups in a way that causes more alienation and more violence, right? That's how a terrorist attack can spread, right? In that the government reacts and it starts to use heavy-handed tactics against groups associated or that they perceive to be associated with the initial attackers. And in Russia, this is a really big problem. Right now, there's a lot of ultranationalism in Russia, and there are a lot of calls for cracking down on migrants. And now migrants can mean people from outside of Russia, especially from the former Soviet republics that they maintain kind of a relationship with, all the various stands in Central Asia. But there are also similar republics inside the Russian Federation. And very often the ultra-nationalists will, when they talk about migrants, they'll be treating parts of Russia as if they're another country. And they'll be talking about migrants from the eastern federal subjects, oblasts, republics, etc., as foreigners, right? And so already Ramzan Kadyrov, the Chechen leader, is warning, because he knows he's Chechen, right? And the last big terror attack in Russia was Chechen. He's seen firsthand how the response goes and falls on the people. And he's already warning the ultra-nationalists, who's normally, he's their guy. He's on their side. He's like, wait, you can't respond this way. Very often after a terror attack, no one listens to that, right? When you try to caution restraint and, forbearance in the aftermath of a terrorist attack, that's a hard sell. I don't care what country you are, whether you are a dictatorship, a democracy. Usually the state is not interested in voices of caution and moderation, especially when it's an outrageous attack, right? And this, just pick any example you want, you'll probably find it. Now, by the way, if you pick examples of terrorist attacks, most often the terrorist organization is wiped out, right? So that's the most common thing. We're not aware of it because, well, they're wiped out. The thing, though, is that historically, the backlash, the over-response on the government's part becomes the issue and becomes the mechanism by which you alienate a group or their supporters, and the government puts itself in a bad position. Could that happen in Russia, right? Well, we've already got a lot of divisions. We've already got a lot of ultranationalists who've been calling for these controls on migration within Russia. We already have a lot of people from the eastern parts of Russia who are being brought into the fight and dying in disproportionate numbers in Ukraine. And so there could be a fracturing. So these attacks may not hurt Putin with his main supporters in the European parts of Russia, with the majority of Russians. However, if there is a backlash to these attacks that falls on the ethnic and religious minorities in the East, that may have a long-term negative effect on the security and stability of those parts of Russia.